And just to tell you a little bit about why Paradise Park exists, one of my fondest memories as a child is waking up on the weekend smelling like early in the morning, earlier than this, smelling barbecue and smelling smoke from the charcoal and everybody kind of getting together with the pans to do the potato salad, and then mama on the phone calling people saying, make sure you bring the this, make sure you bring the lighter, do we have the frisbees, do we have, because that was the day we were going to have a big huge family picnic at where I'm from 30 years ago, being in Atlanta for 30 years, but before that, Cleveland, Ohio is where I'm originally from. We have a place called Euclid Creek Park. And my mom has like 5 or 6 brothers and sisters. My dad had 5 or 6 brothers and sisters. And so, it's plenty of cousins, right? Here is like 25 cousins. We had people of all age, second cousins, first cousins. And we would go to that park and we would just eat and play all kinds of games, every kind of game, dodgeball, all of that. Be in the creek, hiking, one minute somebody was crying, the next minute somebody was laughing. It was just fun. Backgammon, spades, we did all of that. And that gave me a lot of pride in my family, and it made me feel good about my life coming up. And I'm thinking, life is good, But in the actual backdrop of our lives, I had a couple of things that happened. Number one, my grandmother, she, when I was old enough to understand it, this was like her second or third time dealing with breast cancer. She had a problem with alcoholism for as long as I have known her. That's one thing that I always saw her doing is drinking. I never saw her cooking. I never saw her eating even. I always saw her drinking. I never really saw her sober. But she did, it was all about mama though. Like my aunts and my uncles and stuff, of course, they knew her much longer than me at a different time before she was far gone. She raised them and all of that. And so at around 12 or 13, I found her in my aunt's bedroom dying of cancer. I know she had gone to the hospital. They had cut her breast off and they had cut her trachea out her throat because I guess it spread. And so then she had the thing, the voice box. So I'm like, okay, it's sad, but I thought if she was going to the doctor, she would be getting better if they had done those things. And then my grandfather, he was a pillar of our family. Everybody was like, what granddaddy gonna say? What granddaddy gonna do? He would pick us up on the weekends. We would go to his house. He had a big house and a yard, big yard. We would go hiking back there. And he was a stern man, and he handled business and everything. But one day we found out he had a brain tumor. And so they said he was gonna go to the hospital and get an operation. They were gonna cut the tumor out. And then one day when he came home from the hospital, I was in front of him, he was sitting on the sofa just like y'all. And I came up to him and I could see that he was vacant. He wasn't really there. Like if he was there, he couldn't talk to me. He was just sitting there, and it was just kind of surreal to see that man in that place. And then in my life, my mom struggled with mental illness. Of course, we didn't know because we were so young, but she would tell us later on that she's just thankful she knows who we are. Because it was a time when we were with our dad because she was in a mental hospital, and then later on, my dad ended up having, at the time I was old enough to know, because I was about 30, and he was diagnosed with congenital heart failure. Let me get back to that because even before that, my uncle Johnny, we had Johnny and Ronnie, they were twins. We love them uncles, honey. They the uncle you call, I want to go to the mall. And you keep calling like, when you coming to get me? I want to go to the mall. And they were just the uncles, honey. They were the youngest and they were twins. And so Uncle Johnny, come to find out, and I didn't know at that time what it was, he had congenital heart failure too. He had gotten really big and just kind of out of breath and stuff like that. And then they found him in his home one day, just his heart stopped, right? And so then when they said that my dad had congenital heart failure, and again, these people have been in the hospitals, and it seemed like every time people would go to the hospital, shortly after they would pass. And I was confused as a child, thinking, okay, yeah, gonna go to the hospital. You know, they're gonna go see the doctor. They're gonna be okay. You know what I'm saying? But after that pattern, I was just like, okay, what is going on? So when it happened with my dad, and I was in my 30s, you know, my dad, he retired from NASA, so he had that good insurance, you know, that good insurance they tell you to get. So he was at Cleveland Clinic when he had his situation, which is world-renowned clinic. And so I was talking to the doctor, and these doctors were special, honey. They had a brighter white coat on. They was younger and brighter. They just seemed, you know, more into the whole thing and smarter. And so I asked the doctor, and I said to him, because sometimes I just felt like the doctors weren't telling the truth. And I said, Doc, I need to just slow down for 1 second. Just tell me, is there something that we could do for my father to be healed? And he said, he leveled me. He stopped, he replanted himself, and he said, listen, it is reversible. That's the first time I ever heard a doctor say that. He said, it is reversible. It's the only time I heard a doctor say that. He said it's reversible, but many people will not do what is necessary to reverse these things. And I said, my heart sunk like never before, because I was a daddy's girl. My dad, we would play all kind of games together. He would play Monopoly with me for hours. We would play the game of life. He taught me how to play chess, backgammon. I mean, I spent a lot of time with my dad learning. And he was an artist. Anything he could look at, he could draw. He could make he was just an amazing person to me. You know what I'm saying? And when he said that, I'm thinking, he don't know my dad. My dad is powerful. He is strong. He's a smart guy. He's a determined guy. Like, you know. And so I said to myself, no, like with me and him, he gonna be all right then. And so when they did release my father from the hospital, and I'm like, Daddy, okay, now you gotta do this. And he's like, they got me all these medications. And, you know, I'm supposed to be on blood thinners. I'm like, I'm not really knowing what he should eat or any of this kind of stuff. But he came to me one day, and I don't know if anybody ever had this experience with their parents, when it gets to the point where your parents are really level with you. And you don't really know that they leveling with you, but they leveling with you like it's time for you to grow up. And my father came to me one day. He said to me, he had this roundabout way of kind of talking sometimes when he was in this place, and he said to me, you know, he would call me Smee. This is what he would call me. And he said, you know, I never grew up working out. I never worked out in my life. You know, he was like, what y'all do and stuff, like I never did that. He was like, I never worried about what I ate or any of those kinds of things, you know. And I knew later that he was trying to tell me that he wasn't equipped to fight this kind of thing. You know, he wasn't in a space where he felt like he could conquer this, you know. And so all of those things led me to a realization that, number one, it's not necessarily the hospital or the doctor. So who can you really depend on? Like, I thought about the things that my mom, my grandmothers would teach as far as like getting well, just certain things that you wouldn't hear from a doctor. Rub, I think it's called camphorphenique on your chest, and all of these kinds of things. Take cod liver oil and stuff. And then when I came here to go to college, I had an episode, okay? Because, you know, I'm out of Cleveland now, honey. I'm in the bright lights, big city of Atlanta, honey. And, you know, I'm excited. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. This is a new life for me. This is a new start. It's something, you know, because I felt like I needed to take control of my life, because I didn't want my life to be like that. You know what I'm saying? I wanted to get back to what I call the peace and the bliss that I experienced when we would have those family times. Even though, like, that was temporary, and the deaths and stuff was serious, that was solid, and that was going to be the backdrop. It was something that wasn't going to change. But when I came here, it was like I could do a new thing. And so one of the things that happened to me when I got here, you know, hopping and popping, 18, whatever, I ain't think about hydration. I ain't think about what kind of meals to eat, if you have vegetables on your plate or none of that. And so I experienced a situation where I couldn't go to the bathroom. I couldn't go, you know, the other kind of go. And I'm like, oh my God. It's the first time I ever thought about going or not going, if I needed to go, if I was supposed to go. Everything was on autopilot in my body. But not now. I was like, listen, I didn't know who to tell. I'm just like, I gotta go to this bathroom. And then I can't even remember who I might have told that secret to, but they told me to go to Seven Nanda.
Yes.
And if anybody know, you've been here in Atlanta, Seven Nanda, honey, on Moreland Road. They said, go to Seven Nanda, honey, they can help you. I wasn't going to no doctor. So I went to Seven Nanda and they gave me a little packet of, looked like leaves crushed up to me. I didn't know what it was. Come to find out, this was Coursera sagrada. And they told me to put it on a spoon and take, not a tea or nothing, just put it on a spoon and take it, honey. And I would have took glass at that point if they told me I was gonna go to the bathroom. I took that tea and everything became okay again. But that was my first encounter with herbs. Something that a doctor didn't give me, and something that could have that effect on what I didn't even know was my digestive system. But when I would go to school, one of the first classes I took was yoga. And the yoga teacher had the personality just like the teachers on a different world. That's why I came to Clark. You know what I'm saying? She had that personality. She would talk to us about how important our posture was and how it impacted the digestive system and all of that. And I'm thinking, okay, I do have a digestive system. Oh, there's things that I can do to impact it. And then but then, you know, as I continued to journey, so taking control of my health, knowing it's something I could do, I started learning. So I became a vegetarian. First I became vegan, and I dropped a lot of weight. And then I became vegetarian. When I got married, my husband was a poultry and fish eater. So we both did poultry and fish. And I still didn't know that much about herbs, but I was more focused on the vegetables, you know. I was a starchitarian for a while. I'm like, okay, these French fries is vegan. Oreos are technically vegan. Doritos is vegan. So I went through all of the stages, right? So I did start to learn though more. But then it came to a point about 10 years ago where I was in corporate America hustling. You know, we learn how to hustle hard, work hard. So I did that, but I found that I was experiencing fatigue like I'd never experienced before. I would find myself in my walk-in closet on the floor in the dark, just feeling like the life was draining out of me. And I'm thinking, I'm vegetarian. I'm vegan. Why would this even be happening to me? I don't eat like my granddad and my grandma ate, and you know, I'm pretty fit, you know. And so I ended up going to a retreat. I came to a retreat in Atlanta, and first of all, the environment, much like many of you said this environment was, it was just brought me to a sense of peace. The people were so beautiful. After, you know, just being out here getting traffic tickets and talking to the manager, and then the girl at the work, she didn't want you to sit at this desk, and you know, but I came to a place where everybody was welcoming, and I heard this term they call saving space or holding space for people, and sacred space, and you know. And then the young lady running a retreat, she taught me about electric foods. And I learned about foods that I had never eaten or heard of or prepared, some of them. Like I had never had lentils before. I didn't know about chayote. I don't think I had even eaten a mango before. We went to the farmer's market and she showed us Swiss chard and callaloo, and all of these, I mean, so many things. And then the herbs, like I started to learn about all the different herbs. It's just the things, staples to put in your own apothecary at your house. And I was blown away. Many different things I learned. And then about 6 months later, I did my own retreat. That was in 2018. I had 22 women from all over the country that came to the retreat. And so, bottom line, the things that I learned, hi, welcome, come on in.
Hey, welcome in.
The bottom line is that the things that I learned is that there's so many modalities, indigenous modalities that we've had for a long time in our community. We've had a caring culture in our community. You know, I don't know if y'all heard of the hot toddy. You know, my aunts would come and make a hot toddy for you. Or, you know, it's like we have cultural and indigenous practices that, because I was only 13 when my grandmother died and her trauma played out the way it did, I never got to hear that from her. You know, I never got to hear from my grandfather what they did and all of those things, but I was learning that again. And then the last thing that really took it over the top for me is I went on a 21-day raw fast. Because, you know, I was getting to electric and alkaline foods now. And I even had a garden at that time, because I learned the importance of having, you know, being able, food sovereignty, water sovereignty. This property's on a well. Food sovereignty, being able to control your food. Because somebody told me, if you go in the grocery store to the health food section, then look out at the rest of the grocery store and tell me what that is. You know, and so I started to learn about food sovereignty. And so I went on the 21-day fast, raw fast, right? And what I started to realize is not only was this fast impacting me on a digestive level, but it was permeating me spiritually and mentally as well. I became so energetic and like clairvoyant or more intuitive than I had ever been, to the point I didn't even want to eat. I did not want to eat food. After like about 2 weeks in that process, I didn't want to eat. And so I started to realize that not only is this about my physical, all of the things that I'm doing is spiritual. So I also became, how I met Tiff is I started to pick up habits like having massages weekly, having yoga weekly, having sound bath. Everyone who you see as a wellness professional around me, I've used them personally. Tiff was one of the first people that I used to help me come out of, you could call it an adrenal fatigue type thing. You know, we have all of these labels. It's just basically not at your highest self. And I was working in corporate America for humongous companies. There's no companies bigger than the companies that I was working for. And so there was a lot of pressure, and I had to be very sharp, and I had to always be very on. And so I found that I couldn't do that without spending a lot of time in self-care. So all of those things led me back to here, because I created an environment in my home through having a sauna, having a place where I give massages, having a yoga studio, all of those things at home. And then when my mom and my sister came, I would let them come. We would do a spa day at my house. I'm like, man, I would love to do this with more people, you know? And so that is how Paradise Park came about. And as far as the services that we offer, the products, you know, I have my own garden, so I started making herbal infused products for the face, body, womb. And then also I developed what I call the Indigenous Biobalance Holistic System. That is the system that I use to get complete control of my health, because I realized it's not just detoxing every 6 months. It's not just yoga every week. It's not just bubble baths, but it's many of those types of things combined. And those types of things being these indigenous practices that have been along in our culture and many other cultures for a long time. All right, so if you have any questions for me, let me know. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap. And Tip is gonna get started with things, but I do want to just see if anyone has any questions.